And actually, that's so it's funny too. Is I checked out, everything was fine, and I came back, and like the crypto market is just crashing. The sentiment on Twitter is like so different now. But I guess we all kind of saw it coming eventually, so it's not a big deal. And either way, we'll just keep building. But I saw that the grants proposal passed, and I guess what are the next steps that you guys see? Like how far out are we from like actually funding like our first cohort? And what are the steps that we need to take in order to do that? I think that would probably be the most important stuff to talk about today. That way we can just keep pushing forward.
Well, great point, Bushi, and congrats again on the marriage. That's awesome, man. Looked like a lot of fun. Uh, but yeah, just wanted to echo the same sentiment. I'm new to this whole DAO punks thing, and working in a DAO. So yeah, I guess I'm wondering the same thing. What else do we have to do to get this done? I mean, one thing I did see in the grants section was a question about the application and the procedure. Um, what is that going to look like? Is it going to be through the web portal? Are we just going to have applications right on a Discord channel? What are your thoughts?
So in the document, it says that it's gonna be like a form or something, and then we can have all these applications on a table. Yeah, but I don't know if we can integrate it in our website or something. But I think probably we can do it easier.
Yeah, I would think we probably would just. I mean, the way that I usually do things is just keep it simple in the offset and just grow whenever like the pain comes. That way we keep like our expenses down, and it's just simpler moving forward. So I would think like we probably would use something like Google Forms, or maybe we set up some sort of kind of like special bot inside of Discord that could grab applications. Um, I don't think people would have an issue with that. I mean, there's a lot of Web3 protocols out there that use Google Forms for all sorts of different stuff, and it's pretty easy to set up, and everybody's pretty familiar with it. So I think probably something like that to onboard applications. Let's see.
That sounds
Yeah, I've
good.
seen Google Forms pop up, yeah, in a lot of different spots. Is there a way though with that, like for example, are these are going to be public applications, I assume, right? So the community would have the ability to look at the applications, or
Yeah, I
is that
guess.
just going to be reserved for like the committee or
Yeah, so I
working group?
guess I guess that's something we have to figure out. I'm going through this last application again, or this last proposal. Um, I mean, I guess it could go both ways. Like, I'm trying to see. I know there was some discussions about having like working groups and or like committees, whatever you want to call them, that would kind of like go over stuff and just make sure that stuff's moving in a positive direction. Just to have like some sort of champions accountable for it, so nobody drops the ball. Um, I don't know if they scratched that or not. I'm trying to look through this and see, or maybe they just didn't go into detail yet on that, because I guess they figured that once we got to this point, we would start figuring this out now. Yeah, I mean, it says right here, it says application. So candidates access tally.so form to fill in details. Um, some example questions like, why do you want the grant? How will you use it? Current DAO activity, your skills, the date you either went full-time or are planning to go full-time, DAO Punk, explain why you need the funding, how to help, direct link to social media channels, wallet address. So it looks like they're talking about tally.so, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, Tally is like this website where you know, to do forms, and actually you can connect it to Notion. But to connect it to Notion, you need like a paid subscription. So I don't think we're gonna go that way. But yeah, I think Google Forms is perfectly fine.
Yeah, and then okay, so right here, screening and finalist selection. Elect screening committee. So it looks like 5 people do this job on behalf of the DAO in exchange for some ETH. It will be open to election call and sesh polls in the server. So yeah, it looks like really it's 2 facets in my opinion. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to lead this call today. I figured Hero Kennelly would be here or Stubbs, so I'm just like fumbling here, but I'm playing catch up here too. But it looks like, in my opinion, it looks like we have two things that we have to really get set up in the meantime if we want to get the grants program running. It's really, we have to set up the actual application process. So either we use like tally.so or we use Google Forms or just some sort of onboarding data collection service. We'd have to fill that out, get that stuff ready to go with the necessary questions. And then it seems like at the same time, we would have to set up a screening committee. That way these people can go through these applications and kind of ferret through the ones that either just absolutely don't apply or pick out ones that just look really great. And then I guess we have to decide how transparent that process has to be. And I guess it really depends on like how many people apply. Like I don't really plan on going through like 100 applications. If we have 100 applications in like the first round, it just seems like a lot of work, like duplicate work. So to me, it would make sense if the screening committee kind of went through and picked out like some based on some sort of criteria. But I guess I could see how that could be an issue too. So I don't really know. I mean, are there any thoughts here on that?
Yeah, depending on how many applications there are, it's gonna be easier or more difficult because I'm involved in like giving grants in other organizations, and sometimes you get like loads of applications. It becomes really cumbersome and very difficult to assess who's the best. So I don't know, depending on the applications, really.
Yeah, it looks like the way they have it written here is like the screening committee will basically do everything, including picking like the various applications that will end up being voted on by the DAO community, but everything will be done in like transparency to where if you wanted to participate and like go and audit them, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, go and just watch what they're doing and be a fly on the wall, you can, but you don't specifically have to. And that's kind of like what I'm doing here. I mean, 90% of our calls are just in an open public channel. There's not much that happens behind the scenes.
And
So
also, I mean, the application time, do we need like to have like a 1 week, 2 weeks, or something like that to apply? I don't know if it says where.
Yeah, it says on here applications are open for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, no, that's for the screening committee. That's to actually elect the screening board.
I like the idea of a limited time duration
Yeah.
for submissions. And you might even want to think about capping the number of applications as in. So you could say, we're going to limit it to say, the first 40 or something that's a reasonable number in the time frame that you allocate. And then you could have, I don't know if Google has this functionality, but it could shut it down after a certain number of entries.
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, my only pushback to that would be like, what if you had a Vitalik Buterin, it was number 41? You know what I mean?
Oh, Vitalik!
I'm gonna apply, man.
So yeah, I wouldn't suggest shutting it down like forever, but you could just say, just to keep it so it's a manageable number for the small team that we're going to have, just open it up in like cohorts. Like you say, cohort 0 is, whatever couple weeks, whatever couple numbers you feel is appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, and who knows how many people will actually have apply. Like it could be a lot or it could be very little. I don't know.
I wonder what are the qualities that we would want to select for? Like once we have a screening board, like what qualities would we want them to be screening for? And then maybe we can set up the screens ahead of the application process instead of behind it. So instead of like collecting a ton of applications and screening the applications, have some kind of a filter for like where the applications even come from. Like sometimes people do creative things like leave breadcrumbs and little trails, so depending on your exposure to the project already, you might be ahead of others, and then we just cut it off at a certain number. I like that idea too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If if we could do that like logistically or technically, I guess would be the better word.
I know we haven't mentioned skills or anything yet, and hello everybody. I'm new here on the call. I'm a web dev for about 15 years, mostly old school web. So just learned the new crypto stuff over the last year. But I'd be happy to put together a web form with the programming requirements to cap off the numbers and send it in, store it in a database, and execute it for like a crew to be able to like peruse them and go through them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, welcome, by the way. Yeah, and again, usually these calls are led a little bit better, but Hero Canelli and Stubbs are not here for some reason. So Hero's got
No
4
worries,
kids,
no worries.
so maybe something went wrong.
What are the qualities that we would want to screen for? Like that we would want the screening board to select for ultimately? Do we have like a set of, or do we kind of just want to trust the people? We like choose who's on the screening board and just trust their own judgment to pick out what's cool? Or is there some idea of that?
Yeah, so I guess the problem with being too specific on skills is there's just so many things at play that it's like, I guess the question is how specific do you want to be, right? I'm looking right here. I mean, they had some example questions.
Yeah, but I don't think we are like looking for any specific prototype or anything like that. It depends.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And it's kind of like, I don't know, and there are people here that do have experience like giving out grants and working for big grant programs. And so maybe they have different experience that I don't, because I don't have experience giving out grants. But to me, it seems like a person that wants a grant, it's almost up to them to convince you why they should get the grant, right? And so it's like, I feel like if it were me putting the questions together the first go around, I would probably, as the grant giver, be kind of vague and kind of present the applicant with questions that gives them the ability to basically like sell me, right? And my questions aren't so specific as to like tell them what I'm looking for. It's more like, you tell me why you deserve it. And then that might bring different things to light that like maybe I never would have thought of, or I'm just not familiar with. And I don't know, to me that seems like a good way to go about it. That creates more human work though, and then it becomes more subjective, I guess. But then it's kind of more vague and more open. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me, especially as for the, this is the first, the first round. I mean, I think we should be pretty open about it just to, see what's out there.
Yeah, and I
Go
mean,
ahead, Michael. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, you go first, Michael.
I'm sorry, I already said, I just thought it was a cool idea. I accidentally left my mic on.
Okay. Yeah, I just like in my experience, I've like back when I was working on business acquisitions, like small businesses and working on all sorts of like different weird industries. The buyers always had all these like concerns over these various things, like specific things that they thought were going to be issues when they like acquired the business and started to run it. And every single time, it's always the thing that is always the biggest issue is always something that they never would have thought of. It's like something that they just wouldn't know until they start doing it. And so I kind of think that's going to happen here. Like I think we really just have to just jump in and just make it as simple as possible for us to execute. And then eventually we're going to start figuring out, okay, like here's the real things we should be talking about. And they'll present themselves on their own. And so that's why I think our goal with the grants is like, we've been working on this for a long time and I think we have a lot of good headway, but we should try in this next kind of phase here to just make it as simple as possible, and make it to where we can give a grant out fairly soon. That way we can start figuring out like, what are the questions that we're not asking that we wouldn't be able to ask right now.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So even if it's as simple as like just working on like a simple, I know that somebody here offered to like build out like a web form and all that, but even if it's just as simple as let's just like use stuff that's pre-built, pre-made for the first go around, and just focus on kind of just like the least resistance in the initial run. And then that way we kind of have a good idea of like, okay, here's how we want to start building it for the next cohort.
The easier, the better. Absolutely. I like the idea of shooting the arrow and then figuring out where it lands and then sort of painting the target around it, right?
Yes, exactly,
Well said.
exactly.
Yeah.
Love it.
Agreed with that. Just one thing, actually. Earlier in the week, there was actually a conversation that was in the grants wall between Stubbs and OX, Panku. I think it had to do sort of related to this regarding the purpose of the grants and to what extent we want the grants to sort of, be nudging someone from corporate to Dowpunk, or would it be, and we were discussing this also, I think, in the last call, to what extent do we, like, for the profile of the applicants, like, how much of a profile do we want them to have? Should they already know about DAOs and be working in them, or should they be newbies? Like, how much of a nudge do we want the grants to provide? I don't know what you guys think about that in terms of the purpose or the profile for the grants and the grantee.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. We're doing bankless DAO governance crisis work.
Yeah, I know.
It's true, though. If you guys get bored and want to see what governance and actions look like, go jump in the governance threads of Bankless DAO, but that's a different story. So, I think in particular in light of like ETH crashing, that people that are applying for these grants should have a foothold within DAOs and doing DAO work and have a sense of what that's like, because the amount we can give them has gone down by half since we first talked about this grant program. And so I think it's totally important that they are DAO conversant, that they have been participating in DAOs. And I'd even go back to some comment I made, like a month or two ago about, maybe even you get a recommendation from, like a project coordinator or a guild coordinator for a particular applicant if we have a large enough applicant class and we have to determine, really the best of the best to give money to, because money is thin now, right? And so it's important to kind of think about that.
I agree. I think they need to prove staying power. And I guess I'll say that lightly though, because even some people in the DAO sphere that I'm involved in, I've been seeing things from some people even during this downturn where they're even talking like people I would have considered to be like really high staying power DAO individuals now starting to show some cracks in the wall. And I think it's only normal. It's just like with everything that's going on. But I guess it has to be loose because this is a tough, innovative market to be working in. And so, but I would like to see the grant money go to somebody that is obviously going to stay in the ecosystem and not just disappear. Like if ETH draws down another $1,000, you know what I mean? That would just be a waste at that point, which I know is obvious. It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. So I guess, Hero, to catch you up, I wasn't really prepared to lead the call. So we're just, I guess, trying to figure out what the next step is. So we've finalized the grant proposal that got snapshotted in. So now I'm assuming we're at the step where we're just trying to get the necessary stuff in place to get the applications going and elect the screening committee. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really been leading up on the grant. I haven't been leading grants either. And, like Maiko has also been sort of leading governance. And so we're trying to decentralize, some of these roles a bit so they're not so dependent on one person. I guess I thought that Stubbs was going to be here to kind of maybe pick up some of that slack. But I know that he's got a lot of in real life stuff and he's busy. So no big deal. I think, essentially, like we need to kind of get the rubber meets the road practical things going on, right? And so, what does it look like? We need to build an application. I mean, that seems to be the very natural first step. And then, once we actually build an application, probably do it in Tally or something. Then we can kind of refine it from there. So I would argue that we build a probably overly broad application focused on people who currently contribute to DAOs. And then, once we have it too broad, then we get back in here and we narrow it down to the language that we really want. And so it's always easier to take language out than to put language in. So that's what I think the next step.
Does it seem like the most logical first step then at this point would be to get the election going for the screening committee, and then the screening committee would kind of champion some of this for at least be accountable for it. Does that make the most sense?
It
Well,
makes
yeah,
sense.
and so we have like a cart and horse issue, right? And so like under the governance framework, we're doing working groups. Working groups nominate, some or elect, some number, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow. Of champions or whatever you want to call people who help to lead working groups, and essentially then you put the work, you get going, right? And so do you do that before you have the snapshot approving the governance framework? I mean, yeah, you can practically, right? You can do whatever you want. That's just no governance framework. And so I think we just need to kind of get some people who want to lead this charge and then have them lead the charge. And at the end of the day, like, we're going to do coordinate rounds, to compensate for people who are on the working group for grants, like we are for treasury and we are for governance. And so we just need some people to step up who want to take this thing, by the horns and go. Stubbs, hello, sir. I came late too. I've been here for 3 minutes, so welcome. And here we are. So we're talking
Hello,
about next.
Stubbs.
And so we're talking about needing people who to grab this thing by the reins and then get the application drafted essentially, and overly broad probably, and then narrow it down. And the only other thing I heard is that, or I guess my opinion was that we should focus, and CB's too, I heard, is that we should focus on people who have a foothold in DAOs, given the price of ETH, and that we can't really fund perhaps the extent to which we could a new person, because we need them to be able to make some dough in DAOs already. So we need some leaders.
And also just have a basic understanding of how markets affect DAO work. I mean, I think that's part of living the DAO life in general, is you have to be able to, forecast and, be ready for these big market swings if you're planning on getting paid in crypto,
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so happy you guys were talking about that, because I was thinking about that too. I'm like, oh man, if somebody was dependent on it, in December, that's $4,800. Today, it's $2,500. So, yeah,
It
I
might
totally
actually
agree.
even be fortunate that this happened before we open up, applications, because only the, the true believers, quote unquote, in the crypto space might apply, because it's more to them than just today's market price, maybe. But on an unrelated note, I'm actually home for one of these meetings, and yeah, I'd love to just work on a draft for that application right now. So, or right after the meeting. So I'll post the post the Google Doc link in the grants channel, and anyone else is welcome to contribute. But I want to get this done today.
I love it. I love the initiative. Yeah, that's great. So I think while that's moving, I mean, Stubbs, what do you think? Do you think it would make the most sense for us to start some sort of process of getting this screening committee elected, or getting applications going and everything like that, while we're kind of working on the governance side of stuff as well?
I mean, I think it makes sense. And honestly, especially if we're thinking that we try to onboard some people who are already kind of in DAOs, or, um, we're not going to have as many applicants this round. So I don't think that we need to have the committee, or, like a people selected already to run this and be kind of in charge of it completely. I'd love to just like officially throw it out there that we want applicants, and see what we start getting, and solidify it, like start solidifying it then, rather than getting all of that ironed out before starting.
Yeah, I totally agree, Stubbs. And like, I mean, I've probably talked to 10 different people in DMs about this thing. I think almost all of them, certainly 4/5 are in Bankless. So you could get used Bankless, who considers us a sub DAO, I've realized recently. So we've been arguing about that. Different story, different day. To do an announcement through Bankless, right? So you get a bunch of people coming in that way. We'll do Blast here. You could do Blast at a few other places. I don't think getting an applicant pool is going to be tough. And then you have the grants working group, who can go through applications. You can have a few leaders. Sounds like Garrett's ready to be one of them. To shepherd that. Stubbs, you've been doing this. If you have a bandwidth for that, that would be dope. But obviously, that's your own choice. and whoever else wants to step up. Like, I don't think we should limit the number of people who want to take charge and kind of see this thing through. From let's make an application happen to whoever we go next. So I think it's really just a function of like, let's get her done. And I don't think you need to wait before governance is finalized to do that.
So
Yeah, that makes
I'd love to, kind of put this out here and see what you guys think about it. But what do you think about just blasting it out to DAO punks, put it on the DAO punks Twitter, and for this first pool and round, not worry about trying to get like all of the places advertised that we will in the future, and to make it a little bit more manageable for us as well, uh, and just have this first cohort start as soon as we can.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
I like that.
That's cool. So not do a blast at Bankless, just do a blast here and out through DAO Twitter.
Yeah, I think, especially since most of the people who are in Bankless that are involved in the community, they're here, they're seeing it. So
yeah,
I don't think we need to bring in a bigger pool yet.
Love it. That sounds
Also,
good.
we commented earlier that probably we should time limit the submission period, because otherwise, it's gonna be too many applications, or probably limit it to a number of applications.
Well, to be honest,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really don't think we're going to have an issue finding applicants. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think that's super simple. What I'm most concerned about, and I'm going to try to shift the conversation if you guys will let me, is what do we have to do to get this kind of this internal stuff moving in terms of electing this screening committee? Because it seems like that's the most important. Like, I think once we kind of shoot it out on Twitter and we get some like reshares and stuff and a couple strategic Discord posts, we'll find applicants. I don't think that's an issue. So what do we do to get this going to where we can elect some screening committee people? Like, how do you guys envision that? Is that like, do we just put out like an announcement on our Discord and our Twitter and say, hey, we're like looking for screening committee applicants, and we open some sort of application channel, and then we like let the DAO basically vote on that? Or, I mean, how does that gonna work?
I like the idea of kind of blasting something out there and kind of, well, part of me says, let's just put a date that we want for having the application period start and end. I think it makes sense to say, let's like have 100 applications and a max of 100, but it may last for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. But once we hit 100, then we're going to close it, just so that we're not overwhelmed, and concurrently, have maybe even we make a channel where everyone can like throw in their official application, where they say, hey, I want to be part of, like, I want to be officially on the committee, because I there's part of me that says, let's decide internally, like, me, Garrett, Hero, whoever, Maiko, are officially wanting to do it, and we'll make ourselves accountable. Whoever wants to, I just throw out names, and then we can do that kind of what we want for actual elections, maybe for cohort 1, just so we can get this rolling. Because I'd hate to have electing a committee get in the way of actually getting a cohort started.
I think the best thing to do is people, like, if they want to be involved in this, just to raise their hand, and then probably we can have a poll or something in Discord, and then we can elect them. But also, like, regarding the applications, I think 100 is too many, honestly. You don't know how much work it's gonna create.
Oh my God, 100 be so many. Yeah. And so again, like, if you go up to the Sesh Poll CB, I mean, there's, pretty strong soft consensus for just working groups, right? So the working group is the committee. And then you have whoever wants to lead that. Garrett wants to draft an application, so you can say he's going to be a leader. Who knows, right? Until we have the governance framework where you'd be electing working group leaders. For now, it's like who's going to stand up and do the work, right? And that'll probably determine who gets elected to be, the working group leaders going forward. And so that's it. So there's a handful of people with grants tags now. We could do another blast out on an announcement channel saying, hey, grants is firing up. If you want to come help do grants, come do it. Pop in the grants channel, we'll give you a grants tag. And then we do at grants blasts, they'll get notifications, and we'll make it clear that it's part of that, the working group, like you're screening, man. And you're gonna have a few people kind of like giving you work to do. And so that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think that would be awesome. Like with Garrett throwing up the document, and then we can all work on it. I mean, we didn't need to elect or officially say anyone was going to be in charge for like the grants. It was just like we've got a good thing, and then I decided to kind of clean things up, and then people decided that they were going to move forward with that document. And so it's kind of, we can do the social consensus, whatever. Like, hey, if we have 3 different ideas, let's have 3. Like, let's work on those 3, and then see which one ends up being the best in an allotted time, and then we can worry about real cohorts when we've got cohort 1 instead of cohort 0.
Okay, so you're saying basically that the committee would be more like a working group, and the working group would basically just be like an open forum that anybody can contribute in or not. It's up to them, right?
Yep.
Okay, and so basically then it sounds like we would need to decide if we need like a separate channel for this working group, other than the grants channel that we already have. And then I guess really it comes down to starting to build out the Discord server in a way that can start to onboard some of these applications for these cohorts, right?
I'm definitely in favor of a separate channel for the screening committee. Just, talk specifically about candidates, and, you have it all there instead of, just a thread.
Yeah, I kind of picture that we do what we have like set up right now. Like you can kind of see like each thing is kind of set up in a group, like verified DAO punks official, community, like etc. Maybe we'll set up like another tab that is like grants, or grant screening, whatever you want to call it. And then we can have under there like the grant screening channel. We can also have all the various like sub channels for the specific grant receivers, which I think we had talked about at one point, and everybody liked that idea. And then it's all kind of in one place.
So you're talking about setting up another category under which you'd have grants, screening, and then you'd have, the applicants who were chosen, and then you'd have the mentorship take place within that.
Yeah, exactly. That way it's kind of clean. It's like separate from everything else. That could work, right?
For sure. Totally. It's a good idea. I like
Works
the
for me.
separate category for grants. I mean, that is like the whole mission of the DAO. So it deserves a separate category.
That makes
sounds good to
sense.
me. Yeah, totally. Cool.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, that makes sense. That's something
Well,
that,
and then, I mean, you should really gate like the screening channel though to people with the grants tag, right? And that way, like potential applicants can't see in there, so there would be an additional screening mechanism behind the screen, so to speak. So you'd have the verified DAO punks, you got to have a DAO punk to see it. But a number of applicants, I bet, are going to have DAO punks, and so you would need an additional layer of sort of secrecy behind that, where the screening committee, screening working group, rather, whatever you want to call it, could do that work without, and so this actually brings up another question that we raised the other day, which is like, if you want to be on the, would you be allowed to be on the screening committee but also seek a grant? And I think that's hard. I mean, how do you say yes to that?
I don't think you could be allowed. I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, I
But you
want to
guys-
say there's a way to do it, but I don't see how it can be done.
yeah, but earlier you guys were saying like working groups, and we were saying that it was inclusive, like anybody can join. So it's like, how are you going to gate that? Like, I mean, if somebody wants to go around that, they could just set up a different Discord account. Wouldn't be that hard.
Well, they need a
Yeah.
grants tag in order to get in there, though, too.
Well,
and
how
this
are
is up for
we
discussion.
gating the grants tag though? That's,
You
what I
can
mean, I
brain
thought
it.
anybody can get it.
There's this idea
Well, I
of
mean, someone's got to.
offering.
I mean,
There's this idea of offering like an NFT 2 working group coordinators. So basically, if you hold this NFT tag that basically symbolizes your position as a coordinator, then you also can unlock your certain Discord channels where you work together. And then you can also just keep it as a piece of memorabilia for your work.
Yeah, because I think it'd be, I think the only thing that we want to gate is the actual screening. Um, and that would be so that we can,
Mm,
show and make sure that the people that are going through the screening process are not also the applicant, so they can't vote it down,
that makes
other
sense.
people. But at the same time, like if all of it's in the open, um, or if somebody's going to go through the trouble to make 3 different Discord accounts and try and be 3 different people so that they can have one of their personalities be an applicant and 2 other ones being like shitting on everybody else, um, I think it'll be pretty apparent. And also, uh, I can't imagine that happening. So, maybe for this first one, have it all out in the open, and that way, like we can see the decision making process that everyone has, and we can kind of like if we have applicants that we don't think their application is a good one yet, or that they're not explaining things, like have that discussion out in the open, and people can improve on that. We can see what we need to do better as a grant giving organization, and um, maybe that's how we do it for this first one.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we may
you're
not
saying maybe
even
we
need
go
a.
for the all open.
Yeah, yeah. That's. I mean, I think that with everything being like pseudo anon and all of that, like, uh, let's make it, radically open so that everything and all the bad mistakes and things like that, you see it so we can learn from it and improve rather than trying to kind of behind the curtain and then come out with a good at the end. Maybe radically open.
Well,
It'll
when
probably. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, well, when do we get to a point to where we say, okay, we've gotten all the feedback that we want on these applications, and assuming there's a lot of like disagreements possibly between people on who's the better applicant, stuff like that, who is going to make the final decision of like, okay, these are the ones that we're voting on Snapchat?
If we keep
Or
the
is that
number of
So
applicants low,
we
then
could
we may not need a screening group, and we may be able to just put a vote to include all whatever 33 applications that we cap it at, or 50 or whatever. But if we had some way of like where anybody could highlight an application that they like an upvote system or something that just makes like more interesting applications more visible, it'd be kind of like more of a distributed screening process where like if you want to dig into all the applications, you can, and you can vote on any of them that you want. But like the most interesting ones float to the top so that those who aren't going to read every application will see the ones that kind of get naturally selected by the community. I don't know how we would do that, but that's seems like a mutual grounds for the visions that are being shared.
I mean, we could do like a top 6 ranked ordering voting system for this first one, because yeah, you're right. Until we have an actual committee where we say, hey, you guys are committed to going through every single one, or we have 5 people, so each of you goes through a fifth of them. Um, it's probably going to have to be something like you get 5 votes. Who are you giving them to? And the top 3 or whatever initially. I mean, that might be how we have to do it.
Yeah, it is like a real
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
time
just thinking.
commitment to really like dig through all the applications. Like you kind of want at least somebody to do that. It might need to be, I mean, I feel like somebody should get compensated for for really being committed to reading through all of the applications just to give everyone a fair chance. I don't know, that's kind of almost the
Well,
role
that's
of
what I
the
was.
screening group more than filtering. If they're trying to be inclusive by not just being like, oh, well, nobody even randomly happened to read your application, so sorry.
No,
Yeah, I was thinking
I
about
agree.
that. I was thinking about that too, and everybody I've worked with, I always want to make sure people are getting compensated for their time. I mean, that's why we're all in crypto in the first place, is because of money. And going full time DAO is like working for yourself. It's all about money. It's all about making money. And in this situation, I feel like people work better too when there's compensation, even if it's not a ton. It's usually just like a social signal to that person that they're doing a good job, and then it also creates some sort of like drive for them to finish because they feel bad if they don't because they got paid for it. And so I was thinking, what if theoretically the first cohort was the people that are going to champion screening and everything like that? Like, what if we funded our first kind of cohort, and maybe it's a reduced amount, and we tested our first cohort on like our own community and funded some DAO punks who are then, one of their first kind of roles is going to be helping this DAO carry out some of its functions.
Yeah, we kind of grazed on that idea in the last meeting, and I think it's kind of brilliant. I like the way that you put it too. It makes a lot of sense. I don't know how other people feel about it.
Interesting. So you'd imagine essentially using cohort 0 funds to fund people to build a more robust cohort 1 framework.
Well, that and carry out cohort 1,
Right.
like from
Yeah.
start to finish, and just see it to the finish. That way we kind of everything gets done, and then it seems like probably the people that are probably going to get elected for this position are probably the people that are contributing already the most to this community anyways. So it's I don't know, it just seems like it makes sense to me, and we'll probably have a better product in the end. And then those people are going to be basically part of the first cohort, so it feels more special to them. Now they're building with passion. I don't know, just makes sense.
Do we want to so still have like the 3 ETH for the 3 applicants for cohort 0, but then allocate some of the other treasury funds that is more of an operations type funding to compensate the committee members rather than trying to take that or replace cohort 0? We use operating capital from the treasury instead.
Yeah, I mean, we could. I don't know, it kind of sounds cool that the people building out this program would be considered kind of cohort 0, so I don't know, it just sounds kind of cool. I guess it's the same thing, but I mean, in the end of the day, like we had like 19 ETH set aside for the grants program from the initial mint, and then we just transferred in 2.25 ETH again the other day. We have some secondary sales commission that have been coming in, like very little, and then we also have another 2.25 ETH that we're going to transfer in once we finish this Aragon collab. So it's kind of a wash. If the first cohort 0 is like our group of people, it's kind of a wash. We're still going to have more than we started with, so it just kind of seems like the right thing. Like, it's like why we're such a young DAO, and DAOs are so young in general, and all the people that are working in this community obviously are very passionate about DAOs, which is why they're here. And it just seems to make sense. Like, why wouldn't we invest in ourselves first, right? It makes the most sense. Like it's like when you're on an airplane, like when those little masks come out, you got to put the mask over your face first before you put it on your little kid. And so it's kind of, to me, it seems like we need to put the mask on us first, and then we can kind of go and help everybody else.
It kind of makes sense. However, I think that's outside the scope of this, of this proposal. However, we can probably compensate people like with coordinates or something like that.
So,
That is true.
I mean, honestly, I don't think that it's outside the scope of this proposal because right now we're saying, hey, we are funding people to, like, we have never said that it has to be for a specific project.
Yeah, but
So,
let me explain. I mean, if you read the proposal, I mean, it's like you select these people, and these people go through the application, and there's 3 people that actually get the grants, right? So, I mean, it's totally different. I mean, I'm not against that, but I'm not against to paying people to doing this work, but I think it's totally different to this proposal that we are creating here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Chorus. Like, I think it's clearly outside the philosophy and scope of the proposal, but I think they just like fine. So then just throw up another snapshot that says, hey, CB's back from a wedding. He's feeling a little matriarchal. He wants to take care of the herd. And we're going to take this money that we had set aside for cohort 0 and instead fund out punks to build out the grants program. Like, fine. I would just put it back to vote again and then kind of make it official that way.
So, I mean, I read the proposal a couple of times. I don't see how it is outside of the scope. I don't think it's like exactly what we intended. I don't think it's outside of the scope, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I wouldn't not define it as DAO punk work either, in my opinion. I mean, it's still DAO work. I guess it depends how you call it. I don't know. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, it just makes the most sense. It's like you test it on yourself first. All the people here work in DAOs already. I don't know. It just makes sense.
It's
Well,
kind
I
of
think it's a
like
cool
beta
idea. Don't get me
testing.
wrong. Like, I don't want to get stuck on semantics. Go ahead, Maiko.
Oh, it seems like it's kind of like beta testing your own product on your own employees. Like Tesla employees get the cars first because they're actually like troubleshooting them, and like all this stuff. So in that sense, it makes sense. But on the other hand, it might seem like a conflict of interests from the outside if, like, say we were to go in the direction of receiving donations from the the greater DAO community for grants to distribute as grants. They would want to see that we're not just benefiting ourselves with the donations that we're receiving. So in that way, like, if we were going to do it, maybe we'd want to make it clear that cohort 0 is an internal beta round, just so that that's like deliberate, and that in the future the grant recipients will be more like objective, because in the future we will also be funding our workers, and folks will be getting compensated, and we'll have that like
Yeah,
all
like
figured
going
out.
forward, it would just be from the operations budget, not
Mhm.
from a cohort.
But also,
Yeah, but in that
like
case,
Ruers
we
was
need
saying, it's
to.
only 3 people who are going to get the grant. Do we only need to compensate 3 people? Like, maybe the compensation should be a little bit
Well,
more spread out and
yeah,
less chunky.
that's what I'm saying. This proposal, that's what it says. So probably you want to do cohort 0 for like people in this DAO. Probably you need to create a different proposal with different terms.
Yeah, the size of the payment for just the screening committee does seem a little high. I'm all for paying people for their work. I just don't know how much time it would actually take. If we have 100 or more candidates, that's a different story. That's a big project. Don't get me wrong, but I guess yeah, the payment details and the number of people seems like a pretty big difference from the initial proposal.
I guess this is kind of
So,
some of the work
what
we're
about
doing in
this?
governance, for working groups and how to compensate folks. So our different working groups are trying to keep pace with each other. Go ahead.
If we're, because I do agree that it could look bad in the optics. Instead of saying, I mean, we could say that instead of it being cohort 0 that we're pushing right now, um, cohort 0 doesn't start until March 1st, and for the next whatever, we are going to use some treasury funds for operations to fund like getting all the documents ready, getting the frameworks, making sure that everyone is on the same page, and compensating some people to move this forward so that we don't take forever. We had a ton of steam in November. first part of December, and then it's been hard getting traction again. Um, and I think that if we compensated, a handful of people, and maybe it's even like, hey, we're gonna get 5 people, and I don't know what the amount would be, but you know, one's over grants, one's over governance, one is over treasury, or something like that, and not have it be cohort grants. It's just, this is operating to make sure that we can be successful for cohort 0.
Yeah, I like that, because I think that's, I mean, if anybody's aware here of what's happening over at Bankless DAO, it's, there is a big problem with this whole compensation. And, a lot of the kind of people that have been working in there are having issues, especially with this drawdown. And so, and they're trying to figure out solutions, and there's been kind of some governance issues and some other unrelated issues, but I don't want that to happen here. Like, I like the concept of these working groups, but what I prefer see happening is it just turning into a ghost town eventually, and nobody like holding the reins. And then the ones who are holding the reins, their like hands are getting all messed up because they're doing all the work and holding all the weight. And then eventually they're just going to give up too. And so I want to prevent that. I think, we have all this great potential, but we need some champions. And I think the best way to get people to step up is by paying people money. And so I agree, like, with however we want to frame it. I personally think the next step forward would be to like elect some people who are going to champion it, give them like some clear like expectation of how much they're going to get paid and how they would get paid, and then let's see what we can get going. Because if we can get this program going, I still don't believe we're going to have issue finding cash flow, but we have to get it going, or else it's just going to always be kind of sitting in this like phase where we're like, oh, when's it going to stop? And and in my eyes, I still look at it kind of
Intention.
and and then in the future we can then kind of reevaluate how cohort 0 went in total, and then we can kind of figure out, okay, like, is this like a full-time position sort of gig, and what does that look like, and then we can put together like all that type of stuff.
Yeah,
Sounds great to me.
I think you're absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to like blow this up, blow up the initial thing, but I feel like maybe all the stuff that's happening over at Bankless DAO is good. Like I think, and we've already seen it in this DAO. Like when the market is hot, everybody's in. You know, you got all your friends and family and grandma's calling you asking about Bitcoin, and then when everything goes to shit, everybody backs off. Everything slows down, starts getting quiet, and the real builders show themselves. And so I just think we just have to be careful about relying too much on kind of free work. We need to solidify some people and compensate them to keep them around and keep them happy. And that's really, I'm talking to a lot of you guys.
So what's next steps? Like people like getting elected and and start working, but then we need to decide how much we are going to compensate them, right?
Yeah, I guess that's the hard part is like, how do we decide what the first working group should get paid? Because we don't really have kind of governance structure in place to like say who has the final say on that and who doesn't. So I guess that we need to figure out that solution. Like, how do we decide how much we're going to allocate from the treasury for this kind of cohort 0 working group? And then once we have that detail figured out, I guess we can just put out like a call to action and say, hey, we're looking for applications for people that want to champion this. And then we'll set up some sort of inflow for that. And then I guess we'll probably do some sort of like sesh poll or something, or to basically do a temperature check on who the candidates should be, and then we'll put it into final snapshot. Does that make sense?
You know what it sounds like to me is it sounds like you're building a template for approving the first grants applicant that comes in with the 6 weeks build the working group committee application.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
You might as well just maybe add that into the, I don't know if it can be added now at this point. It might be a little late to change the prospectus or whatever, but just like to lead people in that direction, being like, at this point with the applications, we're also looking for, working group participants for this DAO. And then it sort of ties together all the things that we were mentioning in terms of, optimizing for, internal testing and whatever before going wide.
Do we want to put a couple numbers on how many people we want and how much they'll get compensated, or how much do we want to pay by the end that this is rolling?
We can argue
Why
about that,
5
but
weeks?
roughly. Well, we were saying maybe March 1st we could aim to launch the first grant. Give enough time for the a couple weeks for the applications to come in, a couple weeks for filtering them, just roughly.
Yeah, fine.
Because and also we have to put, if we are going to do this by compensating by like a project start and end date, that's the whole point of paying someone, is they do have a deadline, I think. So putting 5 or 6 week timeline on it seems about right to me. What are your guys' thoughts?
That makes sense. I definitely do. I mean, so you calculate what, like 2 ETH?
Yeah, roughly. I did 40 hours a week. I just said $25 an hour. I figured that was fair for this kind of work. Times 5 days a week, or I'm sorry, I did times 5 weeks, but times 6 weeks, which is $6,000. Or I know it's maybe more like 2.5 ETH right now, but I guess at the end of the day, what does that come down to? Like 0.5 ETH per person?
0.4, yeah.
But are we assuming that
I mean, it
people are
seems
working 40
reasonable.
hours a week on it?
In total, like each out of the 5 people, each put in maybe 8 hours. So you get, over the course of the week, 40 labor hours.
To be honest, I don't think this requires that much time, but that's my thought.
I think you're right too. I was just trying to put out an initial compensation framework, just using,
So
you know.
I think that if we wanted to do sort of this framework for grants, treasury, and the governance, like make sure that the whole DAO is moving forward quickly, then it makes sense to have, 3 to 5 people. I think if it's just for grants, then it's insane to have 5 people. And if they're
Mm.
all working 8 hours a week, then they're going to spend half of that time just um, trying to talk to each other, see what the thoughts are. So, I mean, I would say you'd want fewer people so that you can have them working and progressing rather than just talking to each other, trying to figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, now 8 hours a week does seem a bit much.
I like that idea of
Realistically, what do you think?
combining all
What,
the working
2 or 3
groups
hours?
together at first. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, Michael.
Oh, I like Stubbs' idea of combining all 3 different working groups into the same 5 people who might have some different overlaps, but keep it simple until we build things out and then kind of bridge out from there.
Because honestly,
You know,
I would say if we're going to do something like this, I personally think that we'd want somebody who's dedicating more than 2 to 3 hours a week to this. Otherwise, we're kind of at the same spot that we're already at. It's just we're paying somebody, and there's hopefully some more expectations. But I think the 2 to 3 hours a week is why we're not progressing right now.
You know what I think is like at the moment you don't really need that much work to be done, but the real work is like screening people and going through the applications. That's the real work. So
yeah,
that's
I
why
mean,
I
this
said
is
like
like,
you don't need that many hours at the moment because you don't really need that.
yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, how are we defining progress, right? And if it's like, okay, it's not happening as fast as we want to, so we try to accelerate that in some way. And whatever as fast as we want to means, I'm not really exactly sure what that is. But if we're trying to, I mean, stay focused for a minute, right? I mean, if we're trying to, kind of energize grants, the snapshot which we passed last week to ratify that framework. And now we're trying to figure out onboard people into that. And we're going to pivot today to kind of change it up. And then rather than onboard external people into the grants program, we're going to pay DAO punks to essentially build out the grants program. I mean, you just got to pick a number, right? There's no magic number. And so, that's the deal. Like we were talking about, compensating with Coordinate. I'm mindful of the compensation issues in Bankless DAO. There's been a governance blow up in the last couple of days because of it. And so now, rather than waiting for Coordinate to compensate, you're compensating people concurrently with the work, right? Fine. Now, I mean, like whatever number you pick is going to be arbitrary, whether it's 2 to 3 hours a week or 8 hours a week. It's like you got to put enough work to get it done, whatever that work is, to get it done in the timeline that we set. And so I think we need to set a timeline for the stuff to get done, compensate at a number commensurate with the work required to get it done by a timeline, knowing that you're just guessing anyway, and move on. So like have 3 people in the grants who do that, give them an ETH, give them a half ETH or 3/4 of an ETH apiece, and then have it done in 2 weeks or whatever the number is, right? But like there's no right answer. You just got to pick some numbers and go, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I
essentially
like that.
where we're at. And so set a deadline, pick a number, and go. I mean, it's not probably not an ETH a person. It's not $2,500 a person for 2 weeks of work. If that takes 20 hours or 40 hours, like whatever, right? I mean, a lot of us work that much anyway.
Yeah,
So like, just get her done. I think that's honestly like where we're at. And instead of like trying to figure out how many hours a week we're doing this and that. I mean, because the truth is, we've been making progress this whole time. It did definitely die down in December. It kind of picked back up in January. It's still slower than you want it to be by some artificial metric. But I mean, it's not as fast as anybody wants it to be either, right? And so pick a deadline, pay people for it, and go. I don't know how to really do it, right?
Okay,
yeah,
cool. So let's get 5 people. We pay to ETH to those people, and until they get the first grants out. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
I
So I
would
mean,
push
if
back
2
on
weeks,
5.
yeah, I think you pick 3 people. I think I think 5's too many. You pick 3 who can stay focused. Say
Okay.
we give them a 3 week deadline. and say we want proposals and a process within 3 weeks, and here is your 3/4 ETH for the work.
That's cool.
I have
I
a
like
question
that.
about.
But these people would also be carrying out the first cohort 0 though. Also,
Also give them one whole ETH then. I mean, I don't know. You know, they're all arbitrary numbers. It's like, what does it cost to motivate somebody to put in the work, and who has the time to do it? You know I don't, and so I'm not raising my hand. I mean, I don't know who does, but people do.
yeah, we have people here.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
oh well, that's the big thing. It's no one has time unless you pay the right amount of money. And
Right.
if
Yeah,
you have
that's true.
time,
No, I agree.
It's like
That's
the
right.
fair
And so is
market
ETH enough to motivate
approach
people
to
to do that?
learning.
I mean, that's a real question. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, is the ETH at 2,500 is a lot less than the ETH at 4,800?
I mean, we could decide
You know,
on
but
a
the treasury only
number,
has so much.
within our budget and shoot low and just say, does anybody want to do this work for this amount? And if it's like needs to go higher, it goes up until there's enough people to work on it. The other thought I have is like we might be interested in
There will be
funding.
people, honestly.
We might need to fund like compensate governance and treasury folks at the same time, just because their work is also contributing to like our ability to push the grants forward. But I don't know if that would be a priority. I don't know if this is what Stubbs meant earlier, but just kind of creating a core group that needs to push everything forward at the same time. You know, the governance proposal, the treasury framework, and the grants applications. But we might just focus on grants. What do y'all think about that?
I don't think will be a shortage of people interested in this. You know, I have many people in Bankless now asking me if they can do something. So I mean, I can link them for me.
Totally. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, so there's a governance framework in place, right, that provides for, and so I don't think you need to go like supercharge that with an ETH. I mean, I think that we need to focus on getting grants going, and so if that needs to be supercharged with ETH, do it, right? But I don't think that there is the same sort of, you know, pressure to supercharge something else. I would just focus the dough on grants and go from there.
Yeah, I personally think, in my opinion, I think we should try not to go above the 2.25 that we transferred in, since at that point we wouldn't be touching our principal grant money that we initially allocated. So to me, it's kind of like extra on top right now. So it's just my thoughts. We do have more ETH probably coming in soon though, so and that could be used as well, I guess.
For the record, I would love to take that role. And I wouldn't even need much compensation to get me by, but like, honestly, I'm glad that this topic is being brought up because it's something on my mind. It's like, I want to keep contribute more and more and more, but I also need to pursue like my own forms of compensation. So if I can get compensated somehow here, like I'd love to be giving more, and by working on the grants application and screening process, so it would be a great way to do that.
That's great.
Cool. So who here can do this work? I mean, Stubbs, do you have bandwidth to do this?
so yeah, I mean, if we get funding for it, then I can do it because I'm in the same boat where I'm like, I was putting in tons of effort before, and I had to scale that back and focus on some other stuff. So I would love to do it.
Great.
Okay, so we have to decide on a number then. And I don't want to keep you guys. I mean, we can always touch base again over chat and figure out a number and fill in some other people that weren't able to make it. But it kind of sounds like everybody here is under the general consensus that this makes a lot of sense. So I guess really the next steps is figure out what the number would be that we can pay these people to get this going, which I'm assuming is some of you guys here. And then also, what do we need to do to actually like put a feeler out there for other people to apply? And then, what's the deadline for that? And when can we ratify that and get the rest of the stuff going, get the working group moving? Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is kind of pick it up more tomorrow at governance. I got a feeling we're just going to talk more about this stuff, and then we'll take good notes or we'll record it, right? We have Craigbot here now. I mean, so people that can't make that meeting tomorrow at 11 Pacific can just listen to that. And yeah, get it dialed in. Cool.
wanted to say hello to everyone. It's been a little bit. I usually try to make these calls and whatnot, but like I've had surgery the past like a couple weeks ago, so I've been trying to recover, which is why I'm a little like MIA. So hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
Yeah, guys, I got to run as well. Super interesting. Rubber meets the road here again. So I'm glad for this conversation. I'm glad for everybody. And cheers. We'll see you tomorrow.
Take it
Yeah.
easy, Hero.
Thanks,
Here.
everybody. Great meeting.
So I'm down
All right,
to.
guys. Well, I guess
Garrett has a document running at
Anyone
this
here for
point. I'm
newsletter?
interested in helping with
No.
that. And is there anyone else who wants to stick around and like keep
sorry,
and
your
hash out the
mic's a
topic?
little low.
Yeah, I can't hear you too well.
Okay. Let me see what I can do about that. How's that? Better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same.
A little bit.
Oh shit.
Yeah, a bit better.
Okay. Well. Anyway, I'm down to work
That's all right. I
with
can hear you if I stop
Garrett
talking.
and kind of keep hashing this application out after the meeting. Maybe we can just stick around in the community voice and work on that document.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna post the link now, and then yeah, I can even just share my screen too, if that helps anyone.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Nice to talk to you guys. And
Yeah, guys, I'm gonna go to.
Thanks,
hi.
Gotta
Brett.
make my
Thanks,
wife some
everybody.
pudding.
Much love,
I'll see you
y'all.
guys later.
Yeah.
This was a good meeting. I recorded it too. I'll drop the link in the Discord, Grants.
Nice, Michael.
Yeah,
Good. I'm
thank you for
glad.
doing
I
that.
hope it's. I didn't want to rock the cart, but I don't know. I just feel like
No,
this is
dude,
a good way
I think
forward.
you
So
brought it in the right direction. Thanks for sharing everything.
I think it's a good time for it because, I mean, I know I've been saying this for a while where I'm like, we have to compensate people because, I mean, we all have expenses. We don't want to do it for free. That's why we're getting away from corporations where they'd suck your soul out and give you nothing back. And we don't want to do the same thing. So
yeah,
I think this is a good time for it.
it's true, man. I've been lucky enough to work for myself pretty much my whole professional career, and I'm young, so it's not that long. But when you work for yourself, you're constantly always like, okay, how much runway do I have, right? And where's my next opportunities? And I'm full time in this space right now, and that's new to me. And whenever these bear markets or at least these downswings happen, it definitely is scary, and you're thinking like, okay, what's my runway? How much do I got? And all this. And so I know everyone else is feeling the same way, and I'm in all these other group chats, and other people are feeling that way, and so I think the only way to get people to stay around and be passionate is to like give them that runway and that comfort. Because people can't work for free. Nobody wants to work for free. It sucks. But sometimes you need people to kind of work for free in the beginning to prove that they're there with the right intention. And I think we're past that point now. Like a lot of you guys have proved your intention, and now it's time to like figure out, okay, how do we make it to where everybody here can get compensated for their time? Because they've already proven themselves.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Agreed.
there's a lot of other DAOs who sort of like take advantage of the social value of people's willingness to contribute to DAOs, but then kind of just lead them on and just extract a bunch of free labor out of like a crowd, and it's kind of sad. And yeah, it's wonderful that this group is like we're staying on top of that, and we're already sensing that and moving in the right direction. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, that's the part I never understood. It's like all these DAOs, and that's kind of something I find weird in the DAO spaces. There's a lot of people out there that are like, they don't realize a lot of these DAOs are for profit. It's like if they're for profit, then the people working in them should also get paid too. Like those people are for profit also. And the whole reason why we're all here in the first place is probably because we were interested in Bitcoin or Ethereum to make money. So it just like blows my mind sometimes.
Yeah,
But cool,
no.
guys.
So hey, have fun with that pudding. Congrats on the
All
and
right, guys, take it easy.
yeah.
Take it easy.
Just out of curiosity, is anyone here to discuss the newsletter?
I kind of was here to do that. also. So if we want to discuss the newsletter, it does seem there's only like a few people that are going to be talking about it, though.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what's the latest with it because I've not been able to join the calls because it's pretty late here. So I was hoping we could have some next steps or have an idea when we're gonna launch it or something.
Yeah, I think like there's a newsletter